You're tuning into another edition of the O Show podcast. We are presented by TickPick.com. When was the last time you bought tickets, Chris?
About 30 years ago.
30 years ago? And did those tickets have any hidden fees added on?
I have no idea. No idea.
Well, let's just say for these circumstances, they did have added fees.
Okay, they had an added fee.
Yeah. Well, I bought tickets. I was going to go home for the summer to see the New York Yankees because they're like the best team in baseball right now. And I was going to use StubHub.com to buy tickets. And when I did, they had 35% fees, which added, I think the tickets were a grand total of $29.95. And after hidden fees, just for one ticket was over $50. Wow. So the fees alone doubled the price. However, TickPick.com has no hidden fees. And now in the state of New York, the New York Senate passed that sites like StubHub and Vivid Seats, as well as SeatGeek, can't display hidden fees anymore. So they're going to get the full price, which is going to expose them for really, really high-priced tickets where TickPick's prices have no hidden fees. So go to TickPick.com. Again, this is O Show episode 524 with Christopher LaPrath. And this is very interesting, Chris, because we tried rescheduling this 3 times. Yeah. This is the 3rd time. First try, well, we did the reading in the studio with Jack London, as well as Britt, and then we tried to do it in the studio again in Scottsdale. Had to reschedule. Then we tried to do it over Twitch for the first time. We were going to do our first ever Twitch podcast with your channel last week. Couldn't get the audio to work. It
was wild.
And it was you who said it's just not matching up. Like the energy isn't there. It wasn't meant to happen. Right. And look at us now. 524 episodes deep. This is the first episode we are doing in Demon Studios, believe it or not. And it's the first ever podcast in black and white.
Because they couldn't get the color to work.
Because they couldn't get the color to work on their Lumix camera, it looks like. But here we are in Demon Studios, 524, first ever black and white episode. Fits kind of your background here. Because we're going to talk, I want to get right into the haunted house story of you growing up in a haunted house. Because this is your book, Things the Dead Fear, which is a true American story by you, Christopher.
Yeah.
So here we are a month later. Now we finally get to talk about this stuff. Because you have lived one hell of a life. And I definitely want people to recognize it a little bit more because you have your Twitch channel, Christopher LaPrath, and people who haven't seen it yet does readings. All you got to do is jump in the chat and say hi, correct? Or
That's all you have to do, yeah.
That's all you got to do. Jack London, friend of mine, helps you run that as well.
Right.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal concept. And quite frankly, give it time and it's going to blow up.
Yeah.
Because it's something different.
It is. It is. But the universe is different. I mean, everything the founder of quantum physics, Werner Heisenberg, said, the world is stranger than we can think. The universe is stranger than we can think.
Yeah.
And I think even part of it, many times, all times when I do readings for people, it changes the energy around them because everything around us is energy. This thing appears solid, but it's not really solid, right? It's an atomic structure and most of it's empty space. So we are mostly all empty space, right? And sometimes when certain energies come in, for instance, I know we talked about the first time I gave a reading for you, it took you 4 weeks to process that.
Yeah.
Because you are a figure that is going to make a profound impact on the consciousness of this planet. Your voice, your outlook on life impacts and will impact hundreds of thousands of people. Now, I know you can't see that right now, but even processing that information, right? I've read for people 10 years ago and never heard from them again. And then all of a sudden, they'll text me going, okay, I'm ready for a reading again after 10, 12 years.
Because what manifested.
It took them that long to process that information. So I got to give you huge kudos for processing it within 4 weeks, because that's a huge piece of information. That's a huge download, right? So if you were thinking about a computer and you were downloading a big piece of technology onto that computer, it's going to take you a few hours, right? This was a big piece of information for you and who you are as a person.
Well, when you say, process it, I know Jack talked about a few people he's seen, oh my God, break down crying because of things that you were able to pick up and they were all true.
Right.
You know, like I hadn't told anybody this before and you
Right.
were able to find it. And then there's other people who are just like, okay, we'll see. And then 10 years later, oh my God,
Right.
it manifests. So like is it a mixture of both, of people kind of like losing their minds right away and other people being like, I don't really believe in it. And then all of a sudden like, oh my God, I got to call Chris.
Right. It's what you authorize. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell people what they don't want known. Okay. That is their priority. They want to keep it secret.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily going to come up. Now I can skirt around it and they're going to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. For instance, I was in another studio years ago and this kid says to me, tell me I'm going to be famous. Tell me, come on, tell me. I went, okay. There's a lot of snow around you. And he freaked out. Now, everyone else in the room heard me say it. And they're like, oh my God, yeah, you're going to New York and it's wintertime. Oh, that's what he's talking about. Yeah, yeah. Well, this studio that we were in had cameras in the hallways. This kid went out and was pacing the hallways for 20 minutes. I mean, just pacing. And he was frantic. And he comes back in and I go, I'm going to tell you outright, if you don't stop doing coke, you're going to be dead. And so everyone else in the room went, whoa. It wasn't the snow I was talking about. That's the little flaky stuff that comes down from the sky.
Yeah.
It was the other kind of flaky stuff that was actually destroying his life. But that was where he authorized it because he asked me. So I don't just volunteer information unless they're asking me or their guides are telling me to tell them. So I got on a plane one time from Florida to Phoenix. Really pretty girl. I was sitting in the aisle. She excused herself, went and sat on the window seat. Did I tell you the story?
Oh, I don't think so.
So we take off and her grandmother's beside me. And she goes, tell her to lose that guy. Tell her to lose that guy. I'm like, oh God, okay, here we go. And I turned to the girl. I said, hey, your grandmother's here. And she's telling me to tell you to lose that guy. And Ryan burst out in tears. She's like, I said a prayer this morning for God to give me an unequivocal sign as to whether I should break up with my fiance of 5 years. They've been dating for 5 years. They've been engaged for 5 years and still had not gotten married. And her grandmother was there, like, in no uncertain terms. I saw her. She was screaming at me in no uncertain terms to tell her to lose this guy. And she did. Eventually she did. Didn't work out.
I mean, engaged for 5 years.
Yeah, come on.
Who does that? Come on.
Right?
Time is of the essence in that
Yeah.
situation. I don't know. I don't think
Yeah.
I could be engaged for 5 years. But that's interesting that, like, you actually saw his grandmother. I know, like, your initial story of, like, finding out, you know, your obviously your
Mhm.
your gift, I
Right.
guess I'll call it, was you seeing your own grandfather, correct?
Right. So the book is about things the dead fear.
Yeah.
It's called Trestle Creek. Trestle Creek is a place in northern Idaho, way out in the woods. And before as a family, we lived in town. Pend Oreille Lake is one of the largest lakes west of the Mississippi. It is, I think, the largest lake. Anyway, we had a house on the lake. We had a boat dock. We had a boat. It was absolutely pristine and beautiful. But my father would chase us down the street with hatchets. So my mother was more concerned with the neighbors' thought than really protecting her family. So here's her thinking. Oh, I'll move them into a house way out of town. So when he chases us with axes, the neighbors won't see. Okay. So my point is, things the dead fear. The question is, people ask me, well, what are the dead fear? The real question is, who are dead? Because to me, there are people that are living that are so caught up in their lives. They're so caught up that they were like zombies. They're just not there. Like my mother was for 30 years. She stayed with my dad, who was extremely violent. And the book talks about being possessed as well, which I won't get into right now, which is too funny that we're in a studio called Demon's Studio.
It is so unequivocally awesome that it worked
Right?
out this way.
It's so wild.
I am so glad that it didn't work out the past few times, honestly. Like,
Right.
really right before we came on, like we got here, you're like, is this Demon Studios? Like,
right.
what the hell are the chances of that? And now they couldn't get the color to work on the camera.
Right.
And it's black and white in
black and
Demon
white.
Studios.
Right.
And we're talking about haunted houses and
Yeah.
possession. Like,
Yeah.
and when you say possession, we'll get into it a little bit later, but like, is it all like bad? Like, do you use, or do you classify possession with like demonic stuff, or is it just anything?
So technically, let's see, we're just coming out of this COVID-19.
Right.
Right. And they check for virus. Okay. Because the virus obviously causes COVID-19. Yeah. So really, the virus is possessing you in a way, right?
Correct.
It's in your field. It's in your body. So there are energies. So on the electromagnetic spectrum, right? The infrared, far infrared, microwave, radio waves, we can't see any of that. We only see 1/3 of 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. We see a tiny, tiny bit with our vision, with our eyes. But there are things out there. We don't even know our own oceans. We don't really know what's in our oceans, right? We don't know what's on this electromagnetic spectrum, where these beings or these other entities or whatever you want to call them exist. And so they can come into our field. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they can actually even be like passed down and affect our DNA. So one of my clients is a neuroscientist. And in order for him to graduate, he had to do this test. He came up with this study, and he created this study where he broke a mother rat's legs, one leg. And the mother rat had babies, lots of babies. They let 1/3 of the babies watch the mother rat's leg break. Saw the pain she was in, the scream, whatever. Then they took the mother rat away. They bandaged her up, healed her, brought her back. The other 1/3 of the babies watched her heal. The last 1/3 of the babies were in a completely different building. They never saw her injured. They never saw her healing. They just brought them in when she was already healed. Are you ready for this? Every one of the babies, whether they watched that mother's leg being broken or whether they were in a completely different building, when they stroked that baby's leg, no matter what baby it was, they would scream in pain. So he obviously passed his study with flying colors and graduated as a neuroscientist. But there are things that affect us that we're not even really aware of, right? And so that's really what my book is about. It's about things the dead fear and being open for these possibilities, especially as right now we're in this growth period of some kind where consciousness is growing. So in my house, you mentioned my grandfather, we lived in this house, and one of the things that helped wake my mother up, because she was basically dead. She was just cut off. She was depressed. She was confused. She was frustrated from living with this maniac for 30 years. She was abused. So that's what she thought that she deserved or that she was just used to. She just become, she would relate to the abuser, right? Which is called the Stockholm Syndrome, where people that are kidnapped then begin to empathize with their kidnapper. Okay, it was similar to that. Anyway, I was 6 years old, walked by our picture window. We were out in the country, miles from anybody, and I looked out and I saw in the front window my grandfather sitting in a rocking chair. I'm like, Mom. I ran to tell my mom. She's like, go play. You know your grandfather's in Nebraska. We were in Idaho. Well, that didn't, I had no concept of distance or anything. And I was like insisting, no, he's in the front yard. And she just finally dismissed me. She's like, get out of here. All right. 10 minutes later, the phone rings, and it's my aunt from Nebraska who had said my grandfather had died 3 hours before. And unequivocally, that's what I saw. And I don't know why I see what I see, but I do know that I have gone to a neuroscientist and had my brain checked. And it's not so. I understand it this way. You know how you may have a better nose than me. You may smell things better, right? Or you may hear things better, or you better have better vision than I do. So everybody has these different gifts. One of mine is just being able to see. If we only see 1/3 of 1%, maybe I see 2/3 of 1%. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you ever question, because like you're telling people these truths, they break down and they're like, holy shit, like I've never told anybody about this stuff, and you're able to crack them in a sense. And you have always said, like, everything always happens for a reason, right? Like the stars aligned some way, somehow, because that's what was meant to happen. Like, how do you comprehend and question why you were given that ability?
Well, when I went to this neuroscientist, he said he did all these tests. I came back and he comes out and he says, "Can you be honest with me?" And I said, "Okay." He said, "How much LSD do you take every day?"
Mm-hmm.
And I went, "What?" I go, "I can barely have a glass of wine. I've never taken LSD." I go, "Why would you ask that?" He said, "Because your brain is firing like it's on LSD 24/7. But what's odd is you control it. So most people's neurons fire one direction, okay? Yours fire both directions all the time, like somebody that's on LSD." And he goes, "Then your parietal lobe is at 200% above what is normal. The parietal lobe of the brain is the area that does the sensing." So finally, after all these years, I actually had some scientific proof. So why are people born with better smell? Why are people born with better hearing or better vision or better strength or better body build? It's just every one of us is put here to assist in the, really, for me, the spread of consciousness, a higher level of being. And we can either use those gifts or not use them. I've just chosen to use my gifts and see what is it I can do to help people. Like we were talking about your gift earlier. Most people are not aware of their power or not aware of what power is even available to them. And that's why I'm really proud of you for working full time and doing 524 shows by doing your passion, because this stuff lights you up, right? I've watched your videos. You light up. You are on, but that's what you're moving into all the time, 24 hours a day, except when you sleep.
Right. Oh, I mean, yeah, that's right. And I appreciate the kind words too, because like the first time I met you, like it was supposed to be Jack, and Jack's like, "I'm bringing my friend Chris along. You follow me on Instagram?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, perfect, absolutely."
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to talking. We invited you onto the set, and then all of a sudden, like I was intrigued, and I was honestly kind of shocked to hear that some people just like couldn't handle their own readings.
No.
Like I was very excited going in. I'm like, I hope you pull something out of me that I've never told anybody. Because not only does that, prove your gift, but like it would be awesome to have that. And we talked about it before. Like you may want to cut some of this stuff out, but like we had like a ton of stuff on camera.
Both times, I did not want to do it on camera, and I didn't want to do it in front of anybody. So the last reading I gave you was with Jack, and there I could tell that there was some holding back, right? So when I do a reading for you, I actually will not do it on camera. I won't have anybody else around.
Right.
And then we can actually just be forthright, and I can just, if you want to, right?
Oh, yeah.
But that's where people feel, but also when I do a reading, a lot of times people don't know that it makes absolutely no sense to them.
Oh, yeah.
One of my old bosses, she was like 26 years old. Okay. And she comes in one day to work. I go, "Oh my God, Andrew, you're going to get a promotion." She's like, whatever, old man, whatever. And 3 days later, a position opens up within the university. 50 people applied for it. I go, oh, you're going to get it. She rolled her eyes. 3 weeks later, all the interviews go through. It's between her and one other guy. She made it through 48 people. She comes in the next day and I go, did you get it? She goes, no, it went to the other guy. I go, no, you're going to get it. She got really pissed. She's pissed. She's like, Chris, it's okay.
She just lost it, right?
Yeah. She's like, it's okay for you to be wrong. I went, it's not me. I'm not wrong. It's the messages. And the messengers are never wrong. The messengers are never wrong.
Right.
Or the source of is never wrong. Anyway, long story short, another director had quit. She got the position within 3 days. So there are instances like that where it makes no sense to people. I mean, no common sense. And then 3 weeks later, a month later, it'll click in. That's why people take notes or record the session, because I read for a woman up in Colorado. Her husband had passed away, and he was talking about, he told her, hurry up and plant that tree because I have to pee on it. She's like, I bought a tree yesterday in his honor. I was going to plant it tomorrow. And I go, what's the deal with peeing on it? She starts to laugh. She's laughing hysterically. She goes, because they lived in way northeastern Colorado, out in the middle of nowhere. He would go out and mark the property by peeing on it. So he would pee on all the trees to keep predators away. So she knew exactly what that meant, even though I had not a concept or clue what that meant, right? Then I said, now he's talking about giving you origami. She's like, origami? Did I tell you this one?
No.
Okay. She's like, origami? She goes, we're llama farmers. We don't do origami. She calls me 2 weeks later crying. She'd gone into her daughter's bedroom, who was like 16, 17 at the time. And up on the shelf, she had all these origami. There were llama origami. She says to her daughter, where did you get these? She goes, oh, last month when I was at that cheerleading event, some stranger walked up and said, I'm supposed to give you these. And she brought them home, never told her mom, but just put them on the shelf. Where do you put that? Like, what? The universe is stranger than we can think.
And it's hard for like a skeptic, I'm sure. Like, how many skeptics have you had throughout the years where you gave them a reading, they were just like, whatever, and you never heard from them again?
Probably none.
Really? So eventually they all come back around, which is...
Yeah. So this one quick story. This gal came to me and she goes, it was Saturday. She goes, I'm quitting my job on Monday. Should I quit my job? I go, well, you're pregnant. I am not. She got mad. She's like, slammed the table. I am not pregnant. I would know if I was pregnant. And I'm like, I said, it's a little girl and she's going to be premature. The woman got up, paid me, and left. She was mad. 7 months later, she calls me. She goes, hi, it's Amanda. I went, who? She goes, Amanda, you told me I was pregnant. I went, kind of. Tell me more. She goes, well, I left the store you were at and went and got a pregnancy test. And I was pregnant. And I said, oh, well, congratulations. She goes, no. Remember, you said the baby was going to be premature? It was 2 months premature. And if I quit my job, I go, I was so mad at you because you never answered my question about whether I should quit my job. But when I found out I was pregnant, I thought I better not quit my job because I have good insurance. And thank God she did not quit her job. So I didn't answer her question directly, but I did answer it in a roundabout way. And that was the fun part of it, because now that little girl is like, oh, hang on, I spilled my water.
No worries. This ain't my studio, so I have to take it up with Colin.
I have a lid on it. We're good. So this is the fun part of it is 15 years later, because the little girl's 15 now, I have read for literally thousands of people because of that one instance where she didn't believe me. But again, I saw this little girl, unexplainable, with the knowledge that we have, right? But there's a lot of knowledge that we don't have. I can't explain how I can send a rocket to the moon and have it orbit around the moon. I don't have that knowledge, right? So there's a lot of things that if we're just open to learning, that's the important thing, and open to possibilities.
What do you learn most about this each and every day? Because obviously you've been doing it for a long time, but like even in recent memory, the last few weeks, what do you learn that you didn't know about it before?
So you've been to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
Okay. Every time you go there, you can stand on the edge of the Grand Canyon and see something different and still be in complete awe. And that's what it gives me. It gives me this sense of complete awe. It's like standing on the verge of a spiritual Grand Canyon. Like, what are the possibilities?
Mm-hmm.
And the power that we have, what can we create, right? And that's why you have created a lot in what you've done with your career. But where you're going, can you be open to even more possibilities?
Gotta be.
So,
and again, this isn't all I want to do, so I'm glad that it...
No, but what is it going to lead to? And we sometimes can't even see that.
Right.
Right? We have no clue. My boss couldn't see that she was going to be a director one day, even though she wanted to, but how that was going to come about, right? To have her competitor get the position, but then another director quit and she gets that position. You know, the dynamics of how it works out. Some people get so caught up in that, oh, it has to work out this way, then it narrows the energy of the universe. And you want to be free of doing that.
Yeah.
Like open up to all possibilities, right? Who's going to, like, for instance, who's going to read my book? Who's going to listen to this podcast? And that's one of the things that you do that you haven't been aware of is you're not just interviewing people, you are actually changing people's lives. Because your energy, who you are, which I can tell, it's changing people's lives. And some people can be really intimidated by it. Okay? Because people want to a lot of times people just want to stay hidden, right? They don't want to be seen. But you have the ability to see people, and they don't like that.
Define see people. Like, is it more of like, because you have psychic abilities, is it more towards that, or is it more towards like, oh, because I definitely know I have the ability to know what people are thinking, or at least assume what people are thinking, you could say. You think it's legitimate, I know. And how do you pick up on that specifically? Just out of curiosity.
So, you know, in the Superman movies, when they're firing bullets at Superman,
yeah,
and they slow the bullets down, or the Matrix, right? The bullets are going real slow. That's what it's like for me. I can see these energies coming in and what you're capable of. So they're like energy fields. So that's what and it's like a sense. So that's why you and I hit it off so quickly, is because you got a gift, right? like you know, Robert De Niro,
right.
you got a gift. So, but you just haven't been aware of it.
Yeah.
And we're all gifted in a certain way. But that's why things the dead fear, they fear not really, they fear either coming into their gifts or fear their gifts will never be shown.
And that comes from anxiety, fearfulness, even when it's successful stuff, huh? Yeah. So, like, who was the biggest not the biggest person, but like the biggest story that came out of one of your readings? You told them like you're going to have a lot of responsibility. It's going to be great. And then it turned out that way for them. And they actually were able to keep afloat as opposed to perishing. Like not everybody does when they're handed a lot of success, but some people can't handle it. Right. And we've seen a lot of big people flourish. We've seen a lot of big people perish under that type of pressure.
So that woman that that was pregnant,
yeah,
that I told, I didn't hear from her for 7 months. even though she found out the next day that she was pregnant, she didn't call me back because it took her 7 months to process that.
Yeah.
And then when she had the baby, all of her family and all of her friends, dozens of them flew in from Dallas to Phoenix. And they all wanted a reading. So she had to tell them the story. Telling the story helped her process that. Now, because that woman never quit her job, 15 years later, she oversees about 75,000 people with her company. And she has flown in executives from that company from New York, California, to spend the weekend with me, have me read for them. Right?
So you've built a decent relationship with her now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talk at least once a month, or she'll send me clients that that need a little bit of encouragement, or my whole goal is to help people change.
Mm-hmm.
How far can I push them? Right? You work out. You've gone to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done training, or like?
Not like with a trainer and
Yeah.
like a team, not legitimately like that. No.
Okay. All right. Well, my point is, you've seen it, you've been around it,
absolutely.
right? Because you love sports, and you know that there's this training program that you have to go through, right? But it's changing it up, and sometimes doing it gradually. So I have a personal trainer. I didn't feel like, I felt like, gosh, I've been doing this 2 months. I haven't made any progress. And then he takes measurements, right? And you lose 5 pounds or 5 inches off your waist, but you don't notice it. So there's sometimes this gradual growth that you don't actually see right away, right? So be dedicated to the process.
I mean, it's kind of the old saying of like, don't enjoy the destination, enjoy the journey. Or something.
Yeah.
Because that's the story.
Right.
And as storytellers, that's what we love,
Exactly.
We love the story.
Yeah.
Because you're going to look back at it once you do reach the destination and be like, that was so worth it. But like, it was the destination that like the relationships built along the way, the ups, the down. Like when you make it, the downs don't seem so down anymore. Like that had to happen.
Exactly.
Like, that was a great story that I can tell now that could inspire and influence people.
Right. Right. So that's an example, just one example. And you're not, like, I know the other things too. I know you see things. We talked about this, I think, in the first reading, right? But you've just kind of dismissed them. Like, is that just that was just a trick of the light, right? Oh, that was just a car going by. It was a flash. But so your brain wants to make it safe. It wants to make it logical.
Yeah.
But it's being able to be open to the illogical and to making room for that. And you absolutely have the capacity for that.
All right. And that could absolutely be true. But again, like, I guess I haven't seen it that way yet, right? Where now I'm maybe a little bit more aware, but being aware and looking out for stuff, does that hurt me in a way when I'm looking for this stuff? Because you legitimately saw your grandfather and he was not there. And he passed away 3 hours later in a different state.
Right.
But you saw that. Like,
Absolutely.
you were aware of that. Mm-hmm. Where, like, you're saying, like, I could I have those abilities, but am, like, neglecting them.
No. It's not you're neglecting them. No. It's just you need to be ready for them.
Yeah.
And not freak you out. Because, for instance, your angels or your guides, you don't go around, if you're married and you don't hide behind bathroom doors every time your spouse walks into the bathroom to scare the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Right? You just don't do that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a relationship. So these angels, these guides, know that we have a very limited understanding, right? Especially you wouldn't scare children. You wouldn't want to scare 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds. It would traumatize them, right? Or take them to a place that would scare them, right? My son, Barney, scared the crap out of him when he was a kid. Well, I'm not going to take him to a Barney show and see this 8-foot dinosaur in a costume. I'm not going to do that. So our angels, our guides, they're not going to try to scare the crap out of you. Mm-hmm. So you and I met because I can tell this gift is developing, but it's going to do so gradually, just like losing 5 inches off your waist.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen in one gym session. It's going to happen over a period of months or years.
Right. I'm looking forward to that day because you're going to be getting an interesting phone call from me.
Well, and it's sometimes, and the thing is people's gifts are different, right? You may be actually more auditory, right? Some people have a sense of smell, or they sense things. They can sense something is off. You're definitely one of those, right? Because you have an empathic ability to where you can feel energies. Now, are they going to materialize visually? I don't know. They may, but start paying attention to what you're feeling first.
I kind of associate that with doing podcasts, 524 episodes, getting the chance to interview some celebrities, getting an interview, and just about anybody. I definitely have always had the ability, even at a young age, to read the room and know how to approach someone, how to have a conversation with someone, how not to talk to them, how not to fanboy over somebody. I've always known how to read the room and read the vibe to know what is an appropriate thing to say in that situation and what isn't. Oh, it's appropriate here to throw in a joke because it seems loose. Or even if it's uptight, like throwing a joke because I know they're not going to, bitch out about it. Having the ability, and maybe this doesn't, correlate with that, but I definitely know I've had the ability to read certain situations and certain vibes in rooms. And a lot of people can, but I definitely feel like I have. And you're shaking your head. And we had this conversation a few weeks back, I feel like everybody thinks similarly, and you're saying that they don't.
So when I was growing up in this house, I would go to school and I go, "Oh my God, did you see the demons in your window last night?" And they're like, so even
no, Chris.
50 years later, that whole part of northern Idaho knows about that house because generations have told generations, right? No. Those kids didn't have those experiences. I'm telling you, dude, you got a gift. Other people don't have that. Can you be free of assuming other people have that or know that?
I think so. I think it'll take time. Because even initially after we had our first conversation, after we had the reading, I was like, okay, that excites me, knowing that that's something that I possess and not everyone or anyone does. But at the same time, you go through everyday life and you see similarities. Everybody will tell you people think the same way. Humans know exactly what they're doing, right? And, it takes time to kind of refresh and implement new ideas and new beliefs in your head on a daily basis. You have to wire your brain a little bit differently to train yourself to think differently over time. Whether the analogy you made about the gym, if you're out of shape and you don't work out, it's hard to get into a good rhythm. You could work out for 2-3 days straight and then you're off again for a couple of weeks because you just didn't have the time. And all of a sudden you're back into your old habits.
Right.
It's difficult having the discipline to change the way you think, the way you do things, the way you act, the actions you make.
Okay. So chuck it down. Your house is a freaking mess.
Mm-hmm.
And so most people just go into, they call it Tharn.
Yeah.
Where rabbits and deer, they get caught in the headlights and they just freeze and they don't do anything. So people get overwhelmed. Let's just use an analogy of a dirty house. If you think about doing the whole house, you get overwhelmed, you do nothing. But if you clean off your desk, start with that. And then give yourself a pat on the back for cleaning off your desk. Then you can move to the kitchen, right? Clean off the counter. You do one thing at a time. Progressive. So my whole thing of doing the Twitch.tv show, of doing this interview is how far can I push you to change with you still being able to move the next day? What I mean by that is if you have a personal trainer, they know exactly how far to push you so that you can still be able to move the next day after your leg workout, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is where you get behind people's change, how much they want to change, and then you take them there, right to that edge, And it may take a few hours, it may take a few days, it may take a few weeks to actually implement that change. And then they're at the next level. Okay. I lived in China for several years. I would go to the market every day. And everyone spoke Chinese, obviously, and I was studying Chinese. But for 2 years, I never understood anyone. It drove me knucking futs. Okay, it just drove me nuts. Until one day, this old woman, and this woman had said this to me every day for 2 years. Ni yao bu yao mai zai? I went, I thought she was saying hello.
Yeah.
One day I walked by her and she goes, hey, you want to buy some vegetables? And I went, oh my God, that's what she's been saying to me this whole time.
Yeah.
Yao bu yao mai zai? Do you want to buy some vegetables from me? And it clicked in. So people contribute learning to a curve. It's not.
Yeah.
So Jack O'Hara is going to be on this level. Jack O'Hara for weeks, days, months. Boom. And you jump levels. All of a sudden, for 2 years, you don't understand Chinese, just like me. And then all of a sudden, boom, it locks in and you jump. It's what they call quantum learning, right? That's how the brain works. Is pathways, you're building pathways in the brain, neural pathways, and then boom, it connects. And hey, you want to buy some vegetables? It clicks in. Did that make sense?
So it's neural pathways as opposed to like obviously relearning something every single day and then eventually getting it.
Okay. So in my book, I talk about a group of nuns in Mankato, Minnesota.
Oh.
Okay. And they would live to be centenarians, really old, and then they would donate their bodies to science because their families and friends have been dead. So the scientists would dissect their brains and they go, oh my God, this poor nun, her brain is full of dementia, full of deterioration. Oh, that poor thing. How did she live? They go back to the convent and they go, hey, how was Sister Mary before she died? They go, she was fine. Well, wasn't she bedridden? And she goes, no. She did her duties. She went to mass. She did her everything. I go, what? So they began to study the living nuns. And every year on their birthday, the nuns would come down and they go, hey, this year I'm going to learn guitar. Hey, this year I'm going to learn Spanish. Hey, this year I'm going to learn to knit, right? And they would pronounce what they were going to learn that year. And they would devote their time to learning that. What they discovered is that these nuns would build new neural pathways around the damaged areas. So think of it as roads being flooded out. The highway department just builds new roads, right? And eventually it stops building roads around areas that flood. The brain does that. But it's opening your experience to that is so important. And opening this amazing possibilities that are happening to us.
So like, and I'll make an analogy too. Like someone goes through a bad breakup. They're down in the dumps for weeks, months, year, whatever. And then all of a sudden things gradually start to get better because those neural pathways or thoughts are slowly change and evolve.
Yeah, they
and
can.
Get to a different level.
They can.
Scar's still there.
Yeah.
But the brain evolves.
Right. So that's where the energy comes in. Okay, so you're looking at different types of energy. Sometimes we inherit certain belief systems passed down through our family, right? But sometimes there are actually entities that try to mess us up.
How so? Like what type of entity?
Okay, I'll tell you another story. There are lots of types. Okay, It's like asking me, what type of bug? It's like, there are literally
a gajillion,
billions of bugs.
Yeah.
Okay, but one of the studios I worked at, but one of the studios I went to record my book at, it was like a 10,000, 80,000 square foot studio, huge. Half the studio was a furniture place. It was like they built like $10,000 tables, and it was high end furniture. Anyway, when I was considering recording there for my book, one of the owners took me back into the huge storage area that stretched for it looked like miles. And they had furniture stacked all the way up to the ceiling. And I told this guy, I said, Wes, don't come back here by yourself. I didn't want to scare the crap out of him. I didn't want to tell him what I saw. But I said, just don't come back here by yourself. Well, the next day he calls me, he goes, Chris, I had to go back there by myself. And I went, what happened? He goes, dude, I just felt awful. And then that night when I had a dream, I dreamed I saw these black shadows chasing me. And there was a guy with a gun chasing me. I go, okay, Wes, don't go back there again. 3 months later, I get a call from him and another woman. It was a conference call. And Wes says, he goes, hey, I have this woman here. She wants to talk to you. She's one of the most popular auctioneers in the state of Arizona. She's inventorying all this furniture that's stacked back here. And she goes, you know what? I've done this for years, but this furniture really gives me the creeps. And he goes, that's weird. You said that because my friend Chris told me the same thing. And I don't come back here by myself. She goes, get him on the phone. She gets me on the phone. She says, Chris, you know where this stuff comes from, right? And I went, no, why would I know where the furniture comes from? She goes, okay, it came from the largest embezzler in the state of Arizona. When they found him out, he took his mannequin, dressed the mannequin up in his ex-wife's bridal gown, laid the mannequin on the bed, lit candles, dressed himself up in the tuxedo, and then blew his head off. When this woman showed Wes the picture of the guy that blew his head off, it was the old man that was chasing him in his dream a couple of months before. And it was dark shadows. So what we perceive, right, we may perceive them as dark shadows. But you can feel a change in the room. You can feel the change in energy. So you can be really happy, go lucky one day, and just within seconds be in a bad mood, right? And you've seen movies like this. You've seen where they can be walking down the street, but they'll actually pass through a spirit, right? So you are a very feeling person. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to what people would call moods.
And and I know we've talked about this before, what people call moods or, change of feeling, in an eye blink, right? People could have what they call mood swings, right? You think that's through something else and not them?
Very likely. Very likely. Yeah.
And that's like, I'll use the word ghost, like some sort of different entity.
Yeah. Or like an energy. For instance, you've been to a party and you were in a really good mood when you got to the party. And as soon as you walked in the room, you went, oh, this is weird. We've all had that experience. And we've left the party. Okay. That's an example of that. Okay. Of something else being in that room.
Right.
Or something attached to someone that wants something from you. It's dark. Sometimes it's really dark stuff.
And I've asked you this before, what is the worst reading you ever got someone? And you said that when they're like really bad, you can't even tell them, right?
Well, they're not ready to hear it.
Right. Why would they be?
Well, exactly. It's kind of like teaching calculus to a first grader. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with first graders. It's just that you don't teach them calculus, right? So you just say, oh, Billy, 1 + 1 = 2, and leave it at that. Like they're not able to grasp the concept.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, the universe is absolutely stranger than we can imagine. We cannot imagine it. And so like a mantra I would say for you and for anyone watching, put this on your bathroom mirror, put it on your refrigerator, on your computer. Universe, show me now what I cannot even imagine yet.
I mean, are there still things that you look at recently? And I kind of asked the similar question earlier of like learning new things as you go along, but are there things that you couldn't even imagine recently in your life that have formulated? Even if they're like the littlest things.
Yeah, absolutely. The way I liken it to, you remember, I don't know when these paintings become popular, but they just look like chaos when you look at them, and then you're supposed to like relax your eyes and you see a whale, right, or you see a wolf or whatever. Is when something catches your interest, you just have to kind of stare at it for a minute. You have to kind of sit with it. Sometimes it's a minute, sometimes it's a day, a week, whatever. But there are things that go, whoa.
Yeah.
Like this led to this, right? And we've experienced it this past month. Weird. Like the guy that was doing the camera today, he's like, this has never happened before. It's black and white.
It's worked out splendidly, Colin. It really has.
So it's a lot of times you just kind of go with the flow. And yeah, there are things that I'm learning every day that are going, whoa. For instance, just in the past week, well, about 2 months ago when I started the Twitch.tv show, in this other studio that's downtown, Jack's studio, there was a guy that would walk back and forth all the time in the back of the studio. Not a real guy, but not a physical guy.
Are you talking a crescent room?
A ghost. Yeah, crescent room music. You been there?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the back, so give you an example, we were setting up the Twitch show and there were several people there, right? And I went out to the car to grab something. I came back in and this guy's looking, he's startled. He's like, you were outside? And I went, yeah. He goes, no, I just saw you walk past in the back. I go, dude, that wasn't me. A week later, Jack has a couple of people in his studio that are recording, and the girl gets up and closes the door to the studio. We told you this one, right? And he's like, what's wrong? She goes, there's somebody out there. I don't like it. And it closes the door. Nobody was out there. So I go in, I do some major heavy spiritual work, and the guy moves on. Okay. A lot of downtown Phoenix is really haunted. But anyway, that's another story. So 2 weeks later, Jack's maid comes in to clean the studio. And Jack had told his maid nothing. And his maid goes, oh, I'm so glad that man back there is gone. She was a Spanish woman, right? I'm so glad that man back there is gone. And Jack's like, what? She goes, yeah, there was a man always walking back and forth.
That's spooky.
Well, yeah, it is, right? But you know what? Viruses are spooky. Bacteria is spooky. There's a lot of spooky things out there, dude. And we just kind of go, whoa.
It really makes you question what people interpret or see in their own brains. Because like that statement right there makes me think like, okay, everybody's wired a little bit differently. Like, everybody's wired a little bit differently, but like she was seeing things that you weren't seeing, but Jack wasn't seeing. Jack's like, what?
Jack
What
could
the hell?
feel it. Jack could feel it. Right?
Jack understands the
Jack
what's
is not,
going on.
Yeah, Jack's not necessarily a visual person, and you may not be a visual person. I'm just telling you, like when you go to the doctor and they give you a shot and they go, okay, these are, or you listen to those stupid commercials on TV about drugs and they go, these may be the side effects. I can just say, hey, this could be a symptom of your growing ability. You may be able to see, I don't know how it's going to manifest. I just know it's manifesting for you.
Again, like I'm very, very pumped for our phone call and hopefully in the next few weeks, few months to see how this turns out, man. Yeah. But we did talk about the book, Things the Dead Fear, the possession aspect of it. And we talked about how like it could be any which way, mostly demonic almost in a sense, you said.
Well, yeah. And a lot of these are just, a lot of people that are dead don't know that they're dead. And I talk about that in the book. It's people that sometimes that die on a drug overdose. They don't necessarily know that they're dead. Okay.
What do you know what they see though?
Okay. So have you ever had a dream and you wake up and you're like breathing heavy? It's a nightmare.
Right.
And you're like, oh
that
God.
felt very real. So that's what.
Right. But you don't, when you're in the dream, you don't know it's a dream. That's what it's like.
That's freaky to think about.
Yeah. So, and people can get attached to beings, to things. And over centuries, they'll attach to someone who looked like their first lover in 1742. Or has the same energy field or similar energy field. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is this universe is stranger than we can think.
I mean, that's freaky to think about because you've had those dreams. I've had those dreams where like you wake up and you're like, oh, thank God, you know?
Right.
Holy crap. I'm glad that that's over.
Right.
You know, it like scares the hell out of you because you're like, I'm in a shitty situation right now. And then as soon as it hits, what a great morning that is.
And then there's no element of time.
Yeah.
So time is a construct for us waking as humans. We don't know that we've been asleep for 8 hours.
Yeah.
We have to look at the clock to see how long we've slept.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So that's my mission. That's my passion is to, hey, wake up. And the change, right? That personal coach at the gym pushes you right to the brink of change and knows how much you can take that day.
Who's someone you've given a reading to, or like, obviously we've talked about a few that like years down the line or months down the line give you a call, be like, oh my God, like I finally clicked for me. But you talk about change. Who's someone that changed the most overall as a human being?
Oh my God, there's been so many. One of my favorites is this gentleman who was one of the head marketers for NASCAR.
Oh.
Okay. He flew in. He wanted to meet me. Again, it was a mutual acquaintance that said, hey, you have to meet Chris. So we met at an Italian restaurant in Scottsdale. He walks in, and just as he walks in, the band starts playing New York, New York. And it was the trippiest thing, Jack. It was the trippiest thing. I'm like, because I knew nothing about this guy other than he lived in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
He sat down, and I went, dude, I'm sorry, but there's something with New York, something with your grandmother. It was not your fault. And he started bawling. Like I'd never met this guy before. Yeah. And he was from New York, okay? And he'd had his grandmother come live with him. But he always felt so bad because he was never able to spend a lot of time with her because he was working so much. And then she passed away, and he'd always felt guilty about that. And she's like, no, I'm fine. Really, I appreciate you having me come live with you. And it was about him letting go. And then he ended up leaving NASCAR, starting his own extremely successful business, which is what we talked about before. Right.
And it all comes full circle. It does not happen overnight. It doesn't happen. It could happen in a few weeks. Could happen in a few months. Could happen a decade later.
So
for it to all click.
When I do a reading, like right here, the energy changes instantly. So when I do a reading, the energy around it changes instantly. But as we all know, it takes a while once the energy is changed to actually formulate into the physical. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, right. So it's a restructuring of people's fields that then once they're restructured, so it's like a building. It has to be torn down first. There's this thing called dissipation of structure where things are torn down, people's lives seemingly fall apart, but they have to in order to construct something new. Mm-hmm. So when I do a reading for people, it can bring in the new energy instantly, but it's going to take a while for that to manifest or to build out.
Right. Which, and again, like when you say the energy changes, it's partially because like, okay, things are intense, things are about to get real because you're about to have real visions for someone.
Yeah.
But then there's the other factor of it actually manifesting over time because of like little instances, like little actions taken, little, oh, that wasn't meant to happen, but it led to this. Like it was all meant to be. And
Right.
you knew it before anybody else did.
Right. Yeah.
It's trippy stuff to think about.
But the thing is, there are no rules.
Right.
It's not like I can, oh, here's a book. I can turn to page 324 and find the answer. That's not, that. It's different with everybody.
It's trippy to think about, man. And like, how long did it take? Because we talked about Jack and B's story of how they met and how it literally didn't take them until like seeing pictures afterwards to realize, oh, wait, this is the red room. This is everything that he said. And they didn't realize it right away either.
Right.
Which, like, hearing that story back, I'm like, you would think you're like in a red room right now. You're wearing red, which you never wear. But like, it took like, how long was it? How long was it when you gave that reading to when it actually happened? Because at that point, he's not even thinking about it.
It's probably 6 months to a year.
Yeah, so he's not even thinking about it.
Right. But it sets up the energy for it. So every word out of your mouth is a prayer. So people understand the power of prayer, that what it is that you state, it's an energy, right? The words out of your mouth, and this is one of your powers, is in a way for you, it's like using the force, right? These are not the droids you are looking for. You have that. So what we state out of our mouth comes true. Okay? Because it's like a prayer. So I'll give you an example. Like I had a client go, he'd say, that just breaks my heart. That just breaks my heart. And then he ended up having a heart attack. So be careful what you say. But when I state something in a reading, I absolutely see it. This is how it's going to happen. This is what's coming in to your field. Okay? Let's put it that way. And then it creates it. So every word out of your mouth is a prayer. Every thought that you think is a prayer.
So how I want to say blurry or concise or clear you see certain things? Like there's obviously with some stories that you told, very clear, like there's snow around you. That was a metaphor for cocaine, right? Knowing right away when the NASCAR guy walked into the restaurant, like your grandmother's telling you, like it's fine, like you're from New York, like that. That was crystal clear in your mind. But then there's other things, like with what you talked to me, you saw Maui, for instance, right? I'm still kind of trying to figure that one out. And again, like could take a long time before that clicks and then, that comes to realization because I've never been to Maui. I've never really thought of Maui. But then there's, other things of like comparing what I have now being the gray suit, but a fine black suit on the horizon, right? Where that's a little, it's fun and it's exciting, but it's a little more vague, right? Like, so like how is it different, like having clear visions and a little bit of, again, I don't want to say blurry visions, but like visions that are like more so like, I see this for the future. I specifically don't know what it means though yet.
So that's because we were on camera and we were in front of other people.
Right.
So I'm not going to go into that right now, but let's do it off camera. Let's go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. Like I had a single mom of 3 kids. She was going to Italy. I'm like, you're going to go to Italy within the next few months. She goes like, you do know that I'm a single mom with 3 kids. I go, I know, but I'm sorry. This is what's going to happen. A month later, she wins this huge contest, and guess where she goes? Italy, right? It's like in your field, okay? So honestly, flat out, I've actually never met anybody like you. So I'm still kind of looking at you like those 3D paintings, but they look 2D, and I'm still like, I don't know if this is a shark, is this a giraffe? What are you? So this is why I'm doing it, because I get to meet people like you, and I get to go, what are you? I mean, it gives me this like, holy crap, this is an opportunity to meet somebody I've never met before and something I've never met before.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love doing what I do. But I know unequivocally that you're ready for whatever is that's coming up.
I'm excited for growth, because like without pain, without struggle, you don't grow.
Right.
You stay stagnant. And some people like that, but truthfully, it's not the right way to live.
Right.
With pain and struggle, it sucks, but you got to get over it because you're going to get to that next level. Like you cannot grow without growing pains. No matter how tragic, no matter how painful, no matter how horrific you think they are in your own mind, or even just like daily frustrating things that people go through, right? Can be very annoying. And in your head, you could like put that on a certain level where it's quite frankly not that bad, but in your head, you're like, I'm done with this, You get frustrated, you see it, people sitting in traffic, not getting the results you want at the gym, not making enough money to do certain things that you want to do, feeling cheated a little bit at work, you can go on and on, being bullied in school, all of these little things, like you said, unequivocally, like adding to your character, adding to what your story is that hasn't been written yet.
Yeah. And then what is it that I am creating? And taking responsibility for what it is you're creating and always knowing you can create something different.
Right.
And you can call in the energies to create something different.
Right. The story's still being written, but it's your responsibility to know that responsibility, like your responsibility with your gift. Like it's up to you to figure out and know, like, what am I going to use this for?
Right.
And you're using it to help people.
Right.
To inspire people.
Exactly.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
And if anybody hasn't checked out this book, Things the Dead Fear by Christopher LaPrath, where is it available at?
Amazon.
Amazon.com. You can literally get it in a day with Amazon, with Jeff Bezos' website. But Things the Dead Fear, A True American Story by Christopher LaPrath. I can't believe it worked out this way.
I know.
Black and white, Demon Studios. I don't think I would have wanted it to go any other way.
I know. It's perfect.
I mean, we're back in black, baby. But this was episode 524 of the podcast, Christopher. I'm glad we're going to do it again a couple hundreds of times, I bet, over the span of the next few years. But check us out. We are presented by TickPick.com. Again, no hidden fees over at TickPick.com. Get your tickets today. The Yankees are looking pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. 2022 World Series champions, New York Yankees. Are you a sports fan at all?
Yeah, I like the Yankees.
Do you like the Yankees?
I do.
Who do you love, though?
The Yankees.
Where are you from?
Montana.
Oh, wow. I mean, we spread like wildfire. Best team in sports, 27-time champs, going to make it 28. But Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show. Things the Dead Fear by Christopher LaPrath. Hit the lights, man.
Thank you.